Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's nice to be showing up to shul now that sunset is actually a little bit later rather than a little bit earlier. So in the case of having constant time, a 6:30 service time, that means in the winter it's dark because sunset is earlier. But now that spring is here, yes, if you didn't notice, spring has arrived, and that means at least on the walk over and soon on the walk back, we will have light, which is a nice thing. Tradition tells us that we can bring Shabbat in early and we can hold on to it for an extended period of time. So welcome to those who are gathered in the sanctuary tonight and those on the live stream and Zoom. It is a pleasure to gather on this Shabbat HaGadol, this great Sabbath. Why is it a great Sabbath? Well, it's great because we're together. It's great because Rabbi David Saperstein is in the sanctuary with us as our scholar in residence, and it's great because traditionally we'd have a long discussion about the rules of Passover, which we're not going to have tonight. So if you're interested in all of that, I would say come on out tomorrow morning to Chavurah, which I'll be facilitating. But we have an opportunity to worship. I'll remind everyone in the sanctuary we are now mask optional, and we encourage those who want to wear masks to please do. And for those who are comfortable not, it is okay to not. But at least at service times, we have different rules at different times of the day, depending on who else is in the building. When the preschool's in session, it's a little bit different because all of those little ones are still unvaccinated, but we're hoping that they will soon be, and that'll be wonderful for them, their parents, and indeed for all of us. So a reminder, if you don't have a copy of Mishkan Tefillah, more than welcome, but if you prefer just to keep your head up, all of the prayers, almost all of the prayers that we will be worshiping out of tonight will be up on the wall so that you can participate. If you're on the live stream or the Zoom, you will find a PDF that's linked to the service as well. I'm going to ask the cantor to actually go back to the Nigun for a second, and I'm going to invite us to transition into Shabbat, not by sitting as if we're an audience at performance, but rather to be present, to let go. I know how hard that is. Let go of the work week that's walked with us here, enter into Shabbat, change the rhythm of breath and heartbeat, hear our own voices, recognize one another. So let's try to do that again.
La
2 years of pandemic, we've lost a little bit of our, right? We're still trying to remember what it's like to engage. Like, it's okay to, oh my God, did the CDC say it's okay to sing? Did they change that rule or not? And am I allowed to? And yeah, we've lost a little. So we're trying slowly to build back. Lauren Young, I'm going to surprise you, and I'm going to ask Lauren, who's a trustee of our congregation, to come on up and light Shabbat lights. You'll find that on page 2 or right up on the wall. As I mentioned, we can always kindle lights early, bring in Shabbat.
Just want me to say Baruch?
Yeah.
Prayer, that's it?
Just the prayer.
This is so exciting for me. I was not prepared. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chadek ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Please. We're up on the wall or on page 9 as we read responsively. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure our failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. And there are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand and wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We join in the mystical hymn of the Kabbalists of Tsvat, Lecha Dodi. You'll find on pages 20 and 21, envisioning Shabbat not simply as sacred time, but Shabbat embodied as sacred personage, our beloved, our friend, bride and queen, groom and king, whatever metaphor or metaphysical vision, the one who we await the return each and every week. As is our custom, when we come to the last stanza, we'll give you a little cue. We'll turn at that time to the entryway and invite Shabbat to enter and join with us. Lecha Dodi.
Dodi likrat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekavela Dodi likrat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekavela Shamor v'zahor v'dibor echad ishmi'anu el ha'meuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'litchila Lecha Dodi likrat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila Lecha Dodi likrat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela Hitoreri כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה
לך דודי לקראת כלה יללה יללה יללה
בני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה יללה 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 בני שבת נקבלה.
We rise, face the entryway, bid Shabbat to enter.
בואי בשלום עטרת בנה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמונה סגולה בואי חלה בואי חלה דודי לקראת כלה יללה 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 בני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה יללה 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 בני שבת נקבלה.
While we're standing, having welcomed Shabbat, we're going to take a moment to welcome one another and wish Shabbat Shalom to those we've entered with and who we know, but then take a moment to introduce ourselves to those in front of us, behind us, make a new acquaintance, welcome people to the Brooklyn Heights Synagogue.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hello. You good?
I think Mom might be waking up from her nap.
I woke her up before I came over. So the greatest danger in Jewish life is inviting a Jewish community to schmooze. This is why it took the Israelites, stay standing, please, because we're right up to Baruch Hu. If you ask our community to start talking 40 years later, you'll make it on a 12-day hike, which is how far it is from Suez to Beersheba. I'm going to invite that at the end of Tefillah tonight, introduce yourself again to the people you've just met. Don't do the "do you remember my name" thing. That's not Shabbostic. Just reintroduce yourself, and you'll have made a new acquaintance or perhaps a new friend. I'm going to invite everyone to turn now, page 28, the call to worship, or right up on the wall, Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. We are on page 31 as we join together, or right up on the wall. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. We join with the cantor in the singing of Ahavat Olam, page 32, or right up on the wall.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו, לעולם ועד.
Page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 39, we join together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, and that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. The words of passing through the sea to freedom, page 40, Mi Chamocha, right up on the wall.
Mi chamocha מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה אלי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כיבד אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך שמו.
גאל ישראל.
Page 42.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום לשלום והעמידנו שמרנו לחיים ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני או אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום אדוני עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים אמן 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 אמן
The words of Exodus 31, Vishamru, page 44, right up on the wall.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
We rise now for tefillah, the prayers we offer before the divine throne, page 46, or again right up on the wall.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi teilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei HaKol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה,
ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
I'll invite, if it's your custom to be seated at this time, to please do so. If it's your custom to remain standing, please do that. We are at the top of page 55 as we join together. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh ha-Shabbat.
Amen.
Page 57 together, ever-present one. May we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, shotcha levadecha b'yirah na'avod.
Amen.
59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul or light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shemcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot. Page 60, or right up on the wall, the words of Birkat Shalom, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam.
Baruch atah Adonai, hamevarech et amo Yisrael, Bashalom.
Amen.
Invite everyone at this time to be seated if you wish. We are at silent prayer. There's a traditional text to take you on that journey on page 62, a blank screen to invite the offerings of your own hearts. Sovereign of all nations, we offer our prayers tonight for the people of Ukraine and for all peace-loving nations and peoples throughout the world. As Jews, we have watched as tyrants and despots have arisen in every generation of our people's history. And it has been our age-old vision to see humanity one day renounce its willingness to engage in murderous bloodshed in order to resolve disputes and claims. So, on this Sabbath Eve, we turn to you, O God. Hear our prayer and inspire us to action. Shelter the innocent and their defenders from the hands of those who have no regard for the sacredness of human life, nor for the right of all human beings to live freely and at peace. Guide our country's leaders and the leaders of nations throughout the world to be resolute, not only in word, but also in action. Let the community of nations stand together in solidarity and in sacrifice, for we know and have learned that defending liberty always comes at a cost. O God, offer us a vision not merely of a perfect peace in a far-off future, but also a resolution of this crisis, this war, in this time. Incline the hearts of all your children toward peace and reconciliation, and bless them with the wisdom, vision, and perseverance needed to bring an end to this vicious conflict and to restore peace to the region. Almighty God, strengthen the hands of those who pursue peace, not war. Bring harmony where there is hostility and relief where there is pain, hope where there is despair. Restore our hopes, O God, and grant us resolve to turn our prayers into deeds, that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and never again shall they need to prepare for war. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is a pleasure to introduce Rabbi David Saperstein, designated by Newsweek magazine, and as he told us last night, his mother, as the most influential rabbi in America, and by the Washington Post as the quintessential religious lobbyist on Capitol Hill. For 40 years as the director of the Religious Action Center for Reform Judaism, Rabbi Saperstein represented to Congress and the administration the Reform Jewish movement, the largest segment, of course, of American Jewry. Under Rabbi Saperstein, writes J.J. Goldberg in his book Jewish Power, the Religious Action Center has become one of the most powerful Jewish bodies in Washington, perhaps second only to AIPAC. During the second term of the Obama administration, Rabbi Saperstein served as the United States Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, carrying out his responsibilities as the country's chief diplomat on religious freedom issues. In this capacity, he served as a principal advisor to Secretary Kerry and President Obama on issues of international religious freedom and traveled widely as America's advocate for religious freedom across the globe. 2019 to 2020, Rabbi Saperstein served as the president of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, the international arm of the Reform Jewish movement. By the way, David, your successor, Sergio Bergman, on occasion is living here in Brooklyn and davens with us when he's not traveling around through the Ukraine as part of his efforts right now. I think many of you know that Rabbi Saperstein is an attorney. He taught seminars on church-state law. There are a lot of attorneys in this congregation for some reason. He taught seminars on church-state law and on comparative Jewish and American law for 35 years at Georgetown University Law Center and continues his academic work as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University's Foreign Service School and Center for Jewish Civilization, and as a distinguished fellow at the P.M. Glynn Institute at Australian Catholic University. Rabbi Saperstein is married to Ellen Weiss, an award-winning journalist. He has two sons, Danny, a musician, and Ari, an artist and a writer. In his book, Thunder in America, network news correspondent Bob Faw, wrote of Rabbi Saperstein, quote, "Saperstein learned from political masters. His energy is almost legendary. No one around him worked longer hours. No one darted in and out of more meetings. Once he'd taken on an assignment, he always guided it safely home to completion." And with that, welcome Rabbi David Saperstein. I put the mics in the less dangerous position.
Oh, because I was hitting the mic?
And I'm going to give you the ear mic. There you go. Thank you.
What a delight to be back here. I have many fond memories of this congregation. Tomorrow I'll have a chance to share some of those as well, but it is a special pleasure for me to be here, particularly during this year that, Rabbi, is your 25th year here? It evokes for me just an observation about the congregational clergy person. I want to submit to you that it may be one of the most unique professional positions anywhere on earth. And I'm delighted if somebody comes up to me afterwards as I make this argument to suggest one that would be of the same nature. But there is no profession that I can think of anywhere that allows one human being to interact as fully and completely with other people who choose to enter that relationship from birth to death, in good times, in bad times, able to shape the values, the personality, the life's path that others who engage with him will live out. It's something really extraordinary. And now, by this point, you've officiated at the life cycle ceremonies of at least 3 generations of some of the families that you've done. What an extraordinary profession that is, and what a wonderful job the rabbi has done of this. A wonderful teacher, a champion of our camping system, for which we are deeply grateful, a passionate champion of social justice that has always been part of this congregation. I was actually in Brooklyn at the time that you launched the first homeless shelter many, many years ago, and you've carried that on and expanded this extraordinary work. We're deeply appreciative of what you've done for RAC New York, of your efforts on the parole reform bill last time, of those of you who are going to be involved this year with RAC New York's priority. The RAC, for those of you who don't know, is a religious action center, our national entity that I ran for so long, and in many states across the country now, we have state-organized RACs from California to New York, who are doing tremendous work at the state level. So and the work that you're going to be doing on environmental issues, addressing climate change, all of this is really remarkable. The adoption of, and this was not the first time, you've done it in several iterations earlier in the history here, but adopting refugees who are fleeing persecution. Something really extraordinary, and it speaks to what my topic is tonight, which is the role that social justice has always played in Jewish life. It has been central to who we are about. From the first moment that Abraham confronts God over the possibility God may destroy the innocent in Sodom, we are taught that to be a Jew is to speak out wherever we see injustice, wherever we see needless suffering. And if we can do that with God, how much more so with human rulers are we empowered to speak out for those values. So why are Jews and Reformed Jews and Jews in America so concerned about, or should be so concerned about, social justice? Let me suggest 3 reasons. First, because God said so. Is it not self-evident that we cannot fulfill our destiny to be a light to the nations, that we cannot respond to God's central call to us to be a holy people if we retreat from the struggles for justice, peace, and equality in our nation and in our world? The work of Tikkun Olam must play a powerful role in our Jewish life simply because it is right, and God calls us to that task of righteousness. 3,000 years of Jewish mothers and fathers have insisted that we Jews do not continue for continuity's sake alone. We do not exist for existence' sake alone, but are called for a holy purpose and a holy mission to be God's partners in shaping a better and more hopeful world. You shall be holy, for the eternal your God is holy, God commands in Leviticus. And how does God tell us we can be holy? By feeding the hungry, removing the stumbling block before the blind, speaking out against injustice, paying the laborer a fair and timely wage, creating courts of justice and a marketplace that is fair and honest. As a great Orthodox scholar, Isidore Tversky, once wrote, one cannot claim to be a God-intoxicated Jew without having a passion for social justice. Second, in a nation where we make up a shrinking percentage of the population, it is clear that we cannot go it alone, that there is no issue central to our hearts in which we can prevail if we are not part of a broader coalition of decency. The fundamental rule of coalitional politics, that in order to have a friend, you must be a friend, requires that we galvanize our efforts on the broad domestic and foreign policy challenges of our nation, both because it is the right thing to do, but also because we cannot expect others to stand for us on Israel, against anti-Semitism, on any particular issue, if we ignore their most passionate concerns on which we agree. And third, we cannot meet the challenge of Jewish continuity without addressing the central role of social justice in our community. Polls have repeatedly shown that commitment to or involvement in social justice is far and away the most common organizing principle of American Jewry's Jewish identity, including the communities that are the targets of our efforts, the young and the unaffiliated. By definition, study and worship are not likely to be the way that unaffiliated Jews express their identity. But social justice often is a gateway to bring them into Jewish life. And no program of Jewish continuity that does not build on that reality will succeed. And there are those who say, wait a minute, stick to religion, stay out of social justice. Or, why do you prioritize social justice over study and worship, spirituality? To all of those, we say, this is not a Jewish question. We have to do them all. To choose between them would offer inauthentic Jewish answers to the challenges that we face. For otherwise, we would have to answer unanswerable Jewish questions. Think about how you would answer this. Which is more Jewish, wearing a kippah or sheltering the homeless? Which is more urgent, to feed matzah to our children on Pesach or feed the starving children dying in Yemen or in Mariupol? Which is a more religious act? To welcome with joy, as we have done tonight, the Sabbath Queen, or to welcome with love the refugee fleeing persecution as you have done in this congregation. To pray with fervor with kavanah and Shabbat, or to express our indignation in the face of injustice. Our job is to weave together Torah, Avodah, Gemilo, Chasadim, study, worship, and social justice, acts of loving kindness, into a stronger tapestry, indeed a luminous talit of Jewish life. And if this addresses the why of Jewish social justice, let us think through together a little bit about how to think about the what of Jewish social justice. I wish I had time this evening to discuss the Ukraine and the extraordinary figure of Zelensky as Jewish president of a beleaguered country that has been targeted by a dictatorial superpower, standing up to protect the innocent, standing up for freedom, challenging the conscience of the world, living out Jewish values every single day. I'd like to talk about what's happening in Israel now, both in terms of the terrible terrorist attacks and the fascinating development in Israeli political system. I hope most of you caught this, but the 61-59 margin the coalition allows it to hold together has now had a defector that's gone over, and it's 60-60. It's not clear what the future of this coalition is going to be. It's possible we will face another round of elections for the last time, if you remember, in 18 months. What an extraordinary balagan that was. That's a technical political term for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. This is really an extraordinary moment to watch what happens. But keep in mind, it actually takes 61 to vote the government down. And now it's 60-60. They can't do it. Or the option is it can also, by majority, by 61, vote a replacement government for the current one. And it can't do that either because it's 60-60. This is going to lead to a misjockeying of both sides trying to get people to come over to their side, and a government that has done so well, somewhat paralyzed now, trying to get one vote for any particular piece of legislation they're going to have. And I wish I had time, of course, to talk about what has been Iraq and the movement's priority about civil rights and fighting racism in America and the criminal justice system. And I want to commend you on the role with RAC New York in terms of the parole reform efforts that you were engaged in. Now, what you did here is really a source of pride for us. Here, all I will say is watching today as KBJ was sworn in, and her moving speech at this time, and recognizing we're witnessing the first black women in American history who, rather than being enslaved, is going to sit on the highest court representing rule of law in America. What an extraordinary moment it has. But I don't have time to talk about any of those. So let me instead set the context to think in general about things, and I'll give you a few examples of the point I'm making. And I turn back 2,000 years in Jewish history to what is arguably the single most famous aphorism in all of Jewish history. If I am not for myself, who should be for me? If I am for myself alone, what am I? Not even who am I, what am I? If not now, when? But of course in Hebrew it's this conjunction linking together the idea of being for ourselves and being for others, being bound together, and both requiring a response to the question, if not now, when? And I want to make an argument that it should be a leitmotif for the way we think through our responsibility as a Reformed Jewish movement, as a Jewish community, individually as Jews, recognizing we pick and choose our priorities by the passion of our hearts in our particular value system and our political views that we may have. The only sin for a Jew is to sit on the sidelines and do nothing when there is injustice and suffering and evil in the world. But how you go about doing it is your choice. But as a community, these are all our values here. We must not retreat, as for Israel's sake, for the Jewish community's sake, for America's sake, for the world's sake, from either the particular universalist component of our social justice agenda. So a few examples. You can't worry about Israel without worrying about American foreign policy. Isn't that obvious? And it can't be that Israel's foreign policy can be dictated only about what happens to Israel. What happens to Israel has to do with what America does in the entire region and what America does in the world. We've witnessed America really beginning in the Obama administration and deeply strengthened in the Trump administration and somewhat continued, although a little bit moved back the other way. We tell you, despite the efforts, all of them made on the international scene, in many ways we've withdrawn from a role in many areas around the world. And in every place we've done that, China and Russia have really moved in. I travel the globe widely, and you can see China building infrastructure where America used to do it, providing aid where America used to do it, Russia playing a role in the Middle East. Russia's the only power that is talking to both the Sunni and the Shia Muslims, playing a crucial role in Lebanon and in Syria, which, by the way, is why Israel's so reluctant to condemn Russia as strongly as many of us might have hoped they would have done. Russian soldiers are on their border. Russian soldiers allow them to function in areas that the Russian soldiers control against terrorist targets that would otherwise endanger Israel. A tough choice for a political leader to make. But America, in terms of its role, has to figure out ways to counteract, and it can't do it thinking narrowly about Israel. It's the broader agenda as well. You can't think about Israel without worrying about Israel's military policy. The weapons that we develop, where we deploy them, what our global strategies are, all of that is going to affect Israel and Israel's security as well. And you can't worry about military policy without worrying about the proliferation of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, the so-called weapons of mass destruction. The threat from Iran, whatever your view on the JCPOA might have been in the Obama era, Iran remains an existential threat to Israel, an intensely destabilizing force in the entire region. President Obama's enormous increase of the Bush administration's level of sanctions brought Iran to the table for the JCPOA, with Israel's military, intelligence, political leaders deeply split over the accord. President Trump's withdrawal from the JCPOA and further expansion of the sanctions neither led to the regime change, as Prime Minister Netanyahu predicted, nor has it slowed, let alone halted, Iran's renewed pursuit of the nuclear military potential, as President Trump had predicted once Iran followed the U.S. out of the accord. It remains to be seen what the new treaty will do. We should soon see the answer to that question, and whether it's going to be better for the U.S., for Israel, for our allies to have whatever this next treaty is than the status quo or not, and what Israel will do if the new accord fails to be enacted or fails in Israel's view to meet their security needs. But even if the agreement turns out to be effective, we kind of miss the dangers of the spread of nuclear technologies and other non-conventional technologies and weapons to other areas of the globe. The potential of a nuclearized conflict between India and Pakistan remains a constant threat to world peace. And extremists in Pakistan and many other areas are working hard to obtain non-conventional capabilities and would be likely to be more inclined to use them because it would be very hard to identify a non-state actor that actually uses them and to retaliate against them. Unless we act more forcefully to stop the spread of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, Israel and the U.S. may well face such weapons in the future. And I'm particularly proud of the fact that at the Religious Action Center in the 1990s, we played a key role in drafting an even stronger role in successfully advocating for the passage, even over President Bush, the father, President Bush's veto of this legislation, the strongest anti-proliferation legislation regarding chemical and biological weapons that the U.S. had at that time. And this is an issue that has special resonance for the Jewish people. Samuel Pizar, the eloquent Holocaust survivor, said an extraordinary speech at the second gathering of Holocaust survivors given before in the Knesset, the Israeli Knesset building, Here with the authority of the numbers engraved on our arms, we cry out the commandments of 6 million innocent souls, 1.5 million children, of whom I used to be one. Never again. From where, if not from us, will come the warning of a new combination of technology and brutality that can transform the entire planet into a crematorium. Halting this is good for Israel, good for America, good for the world. The universal and the particular are bound together, and you cannot worry about Israel without worrying about global energy policy. It was a lever that allowed the Arab countries to manipulate the foreign policy of many countries across the globe into anti-Israel posture for decades. Things are beginning to turn around, and President Trump deserves credit for the Abraham Accords. I hope that this administration will use those accords to try and get the Arab countries to make it a regional priority to move some resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And you can't worry about energy policy without worrying about environmental policy. Many experts predict that the next war, shooting war in the Middle East, may be over the shrinking shortage of water, and the shrinking supplies of water in the region. And we see in Ukraine what reliance on fossil fuels has done in terms of both military and diplomatic policies here. And down the road, with the Jews who are involved, like Dayenu and Razon and Kodrel, in efforts to really address climate change, what they're going to do 50 years down the road when we do free ourselves of dependence on fossil fuels in its entirety, then this will be a major contribution to Israel's well-being, to America's well-being, the world's well-being. Just a word more about climate change, because I think you know as well as I do that for millennials and Gen Z, this is such a vital, important issue. And we Jews know why we should be involved. L'Adonai haaretz umlaah, the earth is the eternals, and the fullness thereof. What we own in a trust relationship, with God requiring that we protect God's creation, not just for ourselves and our world, but for the generations to come. That idea of responsibility to those generations is one of the religious community's greatest contribution to ethical thought over the centuries. For Jews, the vast array of Talmudic environmental regulations protecting water and air, insisting on conservation of resources, the belts of green planted around urban areas all testify to the obligation of Jews to address such environmental concerns. But of course, the urgency that we face today challenges our ability to apply those values to the world in which we dwell, a crisis whose complexities we're only begin to see. And I say that literally because we are the first generation, those of us my age and others of a similar, we're the first generation in all of human history to actually see our world. The first. The image of the whole earth taken from outer space is the defining image, the icon, the revelation of our generation. No other humans before us had experienced this. As we see it from afar, this blue-green home, its great forest and seas, its green and blue, its mountains and creatures, it truly is sweet and precious. And as God saw it, ki tov, and it was good. But just at the very moment that we see this, with wonder and clarity and awe, we are suddenly confronted by the startling evidence of its peril, of the damage being wrought by our own hands, our indifference, our selfishness, affecting all of us: global warming, ozone depletion, escalating eradication of entire species of life, destruction of our rainforests, runaway world population. Current studies indicate that things are going bad far faster than was even predicted by the alarmists 10 or 15 years ago. Melting polar ice, rising sea levels, increasing patterns of extreme weather, intense hurricanes, forest fires, climate zones that are shifting into arid or flood-prone regions. This very week, the UN's premier research arm, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, concluded that things are literally spinning out of control. It's now or never, Secretary General Guterres warned. Unless action is taken soon, we're going to have cities underwater, unprecedented heat waves, terrifying storms, widespread water shortage, extinction of up to 1 million species of plants and animals. This is not fiction or exaggeration, he said. It is what science tells us will result from our current energy policies. And you and I, we feel this personally. This is our home. Everyone we have ever known and loved lives on this earth, lived on this earth, or will live on this earth. Every child or grandchild of yours and mine will inherit this home, however we leave it. And this, above all, if things go really bad, there will be no Noah's Ark that will protect Jews while others perish. We are all in this together. You cannot worry about oppressed Jews in foreign lands or the spread of global anti-Semitism without worrying about religious freedom and tolerance, and without confronting religious persecution and hate speech and hate crimes both in America and across the globe. You can't do it just by fighting anti-Semitism if the atmosphere is inculcating this and legitimizes it for other groups as well. This is a serious challenge for us, for all of us. You cannot worry about Jewish refugees without worrying about refugee policy more broadly. We Jews have been the quintessential refugee community in the history of the world. From Abraham leaving his home to go to Canaan, Jacob, because of famine, fleeing Israel, going to Egypt, Moses leading his people to slavery, to freedom in the Promised Land. Jews throughout history who were banished or exiled or forced to flee by religious prejudice and military destruction of the areas in which they lived, seeking simply safety and security and freedom. And where they did find that, they flourished and added immensely to the societies of which they were a part. It was all too rare in Jewish history. But America, what an extraordinary country for Jews. And our dedication to America's values, the lessons of our history, I think is one of the reasons American Jewry has given such overwhelming support for a more generous and compassionate refugee policy, and explains the virtually universal Jewish anathema at the growing demonization of refugees that we have seen over the last years here, and the efforts to bar refugees from Muslim-majority countries and to drastically cut the numbers of refugees that would be admitted. And a point of personal observation in terms of Jewish ethics. I visited refugee camps in some of the worst, most imperiled areas across the globe. Everywhere, it is the children, malnourished, unable to survive unremitting strains, who so often die first. In the Seder service, and this is a congregation that produced not just the president of, who was led earlier, not just by the president of the URJ, but the head of the Central Conference of American Rabbis. Hara Person was raised in this congregation, and I really hope that every one of you has taken a look at the beautiful new Reform Movement Haggadah that she was a key person in putting together. And I hope many of you have an occasion to use it. Not too late to order it if you've not yet done so. But in the Seder service, many these days, and it is embodied in that Haggadah, lift up the allusion to Shifra and Puah, the Egyptian midwives who defied Pharaoh's orders to commit genocide against the Jews by killing the newborn males. How can you not think about what's happening in the Ukraine when you hear this? How can you not think about what's happening to Uyghur Muslims and Rohingya Muslims when you read this? What is our responsibility to be Shifra and Puah wherever we can through direct or indirect efforts to protect the innocent? But it is the children who, living in poverty, displaced from homes to refugee camps, caught in the midst of violent conflict, far too often the children who die first. And the global refugee crisis, now the largest in all of recorded human history of displaced populations and refugees, here from Myanmar to Africa to Syria to the 8 to 10 million displaced in Ukraine, 4 million of them refugees who have fled their countries, pricks the conscience of all good people. And the image of the dead that we have seen, elderly people, children, lying dead in the streets of Ukraine. Who can ever forget those images anymore? Who can forget the image of 3-year-old Aylan Kurdi, the Syrian refugee 10 years ago, lying dead on a Turkish beach, his 5-year-old brother Galib and his mother Rehan perishing nearby. We dare not stand by the blood of a single child more, not in the refugee camps, not in the streets of our cities, with the homeless, not those being trafficked in brothels or sweatshops in nations across the globe. The Nobel Prize-winning poet Nelly Sachs, a German Jewish refugee who fled Nazi persecution, wrote of the Holocaust, "O night of the weeping children, O night of the children branded for death, sleep may not enter here. Terrible nursemaids have usurped the place of mothers. Instead of mother's milk, panic suckles the little ones. Yesterday, mothers still drew sleep toward them like a white moon. There was a doll with cheeks rouged by kisses in one arm, the stuffed pet already brought to life by love, and in the other, now blows the wind of dying, blows the shifts over the hair that no one will ever comb again." And you can't worry about hate crimes, you can't worry about anti-Semitism without addressing racism, hate speech on our internet, in our political discourse. Those who have been targeted, Jews are the most frequently targeted religious group. African Americans are targeted twice the rate even of Jews as the primary targets of hate crimes in America. And make no mistake about it, exactly what hate crimes are about. Here, the damage done by hate crimes on America, on the victims, is more than mere acts of violence. They're more than murders, beatings, arsons, desecration. Hate crimes are nothing less than attacks on the values that are the pillars of our republic and the guarantors of our freedom. They're a betrayal of the promise of America. They erode our national well-being, and those who commit these crimes do so fully intending to tear at the too often frayed threads of diversity that bind us together and make us strong. They seek to divide and conquer. They seek to tear us apart, pitting American against American, fomenting violence and civil discord. What's been extraordinary is how the religious communities of America have gathered together to fight against this, to stand together, to clean up graffiti, to repair desecrations, to stand with the victims and their communities is true in Tree of Life in Pittsburgh and Poway and in Texas here. This has been something extraordinary about America. And in doing so, we are modeling the very world that we are trying to create. Do you remember the remarkable verses in the book of Esther when Mordecai beseeches Esther and says, "Go lobby King Ahasuerus on behalf of your people"? And she first demurs, and Mordecai urges her to have courage, saying, "Who knows whether your elevation to the royal house to access power and influence was not for such a time as this?" For such a time as this, might not we see the unprecedented freedom given us in North America at such a remarkable crossroads of human history, see our attainment of wealth, power, and influence in the world's most important nation, attainments beyond the wildest imagination of those who came before, granted us for such a time as this. The Midrash then comments that this remarkable woman lobbyist, Queen Esther, decides she will engage in advocacy on behalf of the values and interests of her people, and it says, "I shall go then, and God shall lend me God's right hand and left hand with which the universe was created." It's a stunning image. It's actually the only time in the Midrash I've ever seen this image occurs. Often God is described in anthropomorphic terms. God does this with the left hand. God does this with the right hand. But only in going to plead for justice do we find the image that our hands are the hands of God. My friends, when you comfort somebody in the homeless shelter, when you feed a hungry child, your hands are the hands of God. When you march for peace in Ukraine, or for reproductive rights, or racial equality, or Israel's security. Your feet are the feet of God. As Heschel said in Selma, I felt like my feet were praying. And when you turn your eyes to injustice that others would rather ignore, your eyes are the eyes of God. And when you listen where others would turn away, your ears are the ears of God. And when you speak out against hatred and intolerance and bigotry in accordance with your conscience, your voice is the voice of God. And when you work day in and day out to do all of this, your work is God's work here on earth. And that is the work we Jews are called to do. And to that call, we know there's only one answer a Jew can give. Hineni, here I am. Here I am, here we are, each of us, all of us, part of this great people, heirs to a tradition and a commitment to justice that is our richest blessing. May you go from strength to strength in this wonderful congregation, menders of this fractured planet, defenders of a noble faith, until all of us together, because of what we have done, shall see the day when justice shall well up like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream. And we shall indeed have created for our children the world they so richly deserve. Amen.
Amen. Yesh koyach. David, before you step down, I'm going to remind people that there'll be an opportunity for discussion at dinner. Tomorrow's topic for the study lunch is going to be the uses and
the use and abuse of the religious tradition in contemporary debates. How should we Jews think about how the Jewish tradition ought to be used as we're dealing with the kinds of issues I'm talking about? How relevant is it? And if it's relevant to you or to a community or to us as institutions, how should it be used?
right. And if you, I'm going to keep the mic.
Yes, it's all yours. It's all yours.
I mean, you can keep it if you really want. Thank you. Yesh koyach. I want to say that for tomorrow, if you did not RSVP but you want to show up, simply bring some food with you, because for those who did RSVP, the order is in for lunch. But if now you're going, oh, gee, I should have signed up, show up. Just bring your sandwich with you. We'll have some coffee or tea, I think. Our thoughts and our prayers are going to turn now to those in need of blessing and healing, whether minor, modest, or major. I want to invite you to turn to page 253 in the prayer book, or right up on the wall. We call to mind on this Shabbat and pray for healing for Lori Blum, Gloria Sancho, Jenny St. George, Hava Gittel bat Freda, Yona Chaya bat Miriam, Ruth bat Binyamin v'Chava, Steve Brown Inns, Yona Tevya ben Label v'Getahenya, Renee Fishzone, Moshe ben Leah, Nancy Lazar, Delroy Aline, Max Estroff, Chaika bat Freda, Chaim, Kim Petchek, Peggy Einhorn, Bruce Shapiro Nygren, Eleanor Shapiro Nygren, Bela Rivka bat Shmuel Pesach v'Esther, Susan Sonkin, David Stephen Cohen, Peter Hort, Ken Kalman Cohen, Christy Frank, Sally Sorbello, Vlado Rusev, Nick Boyer, Mickey Kahan, Julie Bromberg, Eileen Dernfeld, Tom Walton, Judith Mincha, Chris Adam, Tim Weber, Jay Wertheimer, Ari Gilbert, Roberta Jamal, Rivka Bat Nochem Viperel, and Roy Block. If there are other names you'd like to share aloud as my hand comes across the congregation.
מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekol habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will. David, sometimes we talk here about the notion of some of the things we do raising up our prayers. And your sermon tonight raised up our prayer and challenges us and inspires us and reminds us of what it is to be a member of the Reform movement in Judaism in America. And I want to personally thank you. Many of you know that my own personal history in coming into the rabbinate is much inspired by our movement's dedication to social justice. And as Rabbi Saperstein shared, they're inextricable. Our prayers for health and well-being for the members of our community are bound up with our commitments to all things. I'll talk more about that in a little bit because we have a need, but we're going to turn our thoughts and our prayers to our nation and to the state of Israel. Let's join together on the wall. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country sound in body and spirit. Amen. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Grant them deliverance and adorn them in a mantle of victory. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. We're going to now turn to our concluding prayers, page 283, Aleinu. I invite you to rise as you are able in body or spirit for Aleinu, page 283, or right up on the wall.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
There are stars up above so far away that we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people that we have loved, for their memories keep on shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. We call to mind these loved ones in our community who are gathered through the blessing of memory. In the Shloshim, in the past 30 days, recent passing of Polly B. Robertson, the mom of Marnita Robinson, mother-in-law of Yigal Rechtman. There's a sad news notice going out. The passing of Joshua Burke Paley, the son of Sandra Paley Brandt. There'll be a memorial here in the sanctuary at 11 a.m. on Sunday in Josh's memory. Passing of Darren Lytle, the cousin of Eric Grooms, Cantor Ayelet's husband, and recalled by her family. Am I pronouncing that correctly? The passing of Alan Leboff, father of Susan Leboff, father-in-law of Bruce Weiner. We also call to mind these recent passings in Israel: Tomer Murad, Eitam Magini, Barak Lufan, Amir Khori, Rabbi Avishai Yechezkel, Dmitry Mitrik, Shirel Abu Karat, Victor Suru Kofot, Yazan Falach, Laura Yitzhak, Rabbi Moshe Karbitsky, Dorit Yachbas, and Menachem Yechezkel. We also call to mind these yahrzeit that fall at the season of the year. Isidore Lasky is recalled by Michael Lasky. Paul Milgram is recalled by Melissa Milgram. Ellen Cohen is recalled by Stephen and Herb Cohen and the entire family. Irving A. Singer is recalled by Joyce Singer. Jack Cohen is recalled by the entire congregation. Hannelore Baum is recalled by Karen Gordon. Paul Lubin is recalled by Fran Altman. Ann Patrick is recalled by Molly Epstein. Lottie Skolnick is recalled by Lou Skolnick. Gussie Person is recalled by our community. Wynne Leslie Galanter is recalled by Catherine Galanter. Jack Cohen is also, I think that has been repeated, it's okay. Isidore Kropsky is recalled by Gloria Diecher. Dorothy Edidin is recalled by Laura Edidin. Esther Rocknell is recalled by Ellen Freed. George Ratner is recalled by Anna Ratner. Edward Fong is recalled by Anna Fong. Harry Goldberg is recalled by Paul Goldberg. Louis Osler is recalled by Shari Hyman. Sam Fromowitz is recalled by Avi Bromberg. Saul Landy is recalled by Gabe Schwartz. Etta Raskin is recalled by Ray Raskin. Joseph Lieb is recalled by Miriam Katowitz. Miriam, have I gotten that right? Francis Kallman is recalled by Phyllis Starkman. Ethel Gerstmann is recalled by Carol Gerstmann. Morris Merenstein is recalled by our congregational community. Harry Johns is recalled by Laura Edidin. Beatrice Cohen is recalled by Janice Collado. Marion Kramer is recalled by Paul Kramer. Sandra J. Feuerstein, the Honorable Sandra J. Feuerstein, is recalled by Allison Basunder. Phoebe Jacobs is recalled by our community. Nathan Bornstein is recalled by Marilyn Dukoff. And Gertrude Solod is recalled by Sandra Poster. If I have inadvertently mispronounced any of these names, or if I have failed to share aloud the name of a loved one for whom you are reciting Kaddish on this Shabbat evening, please do share those names aloud as my hand comes across the congregation. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may their memories be for blessing. We sanctify their memories and their names as we sanctify God's name and pray for the coming of God's realm. The words of Kaddish Yatom, page 294, or right up on the wall, as we join together. Page 294. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemeh Rabba.
Amen.
Be'alama divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayei chon u'vyomei chon u'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. B'gala u'vizman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shemei Kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran bi'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Osei Shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei Shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. May the source of peace that reigns on high cause peace to descend upon us, upon Israel, upon our entire world. And let us all say, Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Ve'imeru, Amen. Please be seated. Before we hear this evening's announcements, I want to speak to two things. One is, I think many of you know, we are hosting two Afghani refugees in our community, and Hamid and Shahid. They are observing Ramadan right now, so it is fast time during daylight. But they are interested in Babette Krolik, who has been guiding them with other members of our community, Judy Wynn and many others. Babette reached out and said they really would like to be able to come to a Seder. So if you have room, they're both vaccinated. If you would have room for these two guys, they'd really like to be together. If you would have room for them, and if you have a late starting Seder, because sundown's about 7:45, so if it's possible that maybe you think you're going to get to your meal late, so they don't have to break fast before sundown, we are looking for a home that could take our two Afghani refugees on Friday night. If you have room, they would be obviously very, very interested. And if you have any language speakers, that's even better. But they're working on their English, and we're making progress. As you depart, there is a sheet. So last night, Rabbi Saperstein talked about the history of Jewish attorneys in the civil rights movement. And I sent this around to a few of you today. It was an article for the Washington Post that my next door neighbor alerted me to. They're actually doing this. Two Harvard teens, Avi Schiffman, what you hear? Yeah, Avi Schiffman and his friend, let me find the other name. What do you think? Both members of the tribe, of course. Mark Oberstein put together a stripped-down version of Airbnb and are creating opportunities to house Ukrainian refugees, including here in this country. There are some number of thousands of Ukrainians stuck in the U.S. who obviously don't have homes to go back to because of what's going on. So, if you would be interested, the article is there. I could put you in touch with my neighbor. She can tell you how she went about it. And it is something that we can actually do right now. So if you have the room and it interests you, please take the article, read it, get back to me. It's something that is a possibility. And yet again, I don't know, David, what do you think? Why is it always us who, right? But there it is. Okay, who's sharing announcements tonight? Lauren Young, come on up. Price is right. Okay, here, give you some.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Thank you so much, Rabbi Saperstein. Really thinking I might need an extra glass of wine tonight, though. I want to thank the Cantor. We had an incredible women's Seder. We hadn't had one in a couple years, and we had one last Sunday. It was awesome. So I want to publicly thank you for doing that. Everybody was in the room. And next year it'll be bigger and better. And thank you, Rabbi, and always thank you, Miriam, for everything. She's the unspoken, amazing person. Okay, so a couple things coming up. You can see all these things, obviously, but I just want to call out that it's Pesach is obviously coming, and Bugsy is holding a chocolate Seder. So if you have a teen, encourage them to come on Sunday at 1. The preschool is going to have its virtual Seder, and that's with Rabbi Lip on Tuesday at 5. And then if anyone, aside from the two nice Afghani guys, are looking for a place to go, please let the office know. We will find a place for you to be. I'm supposed to be in Miami. God willing, I will be in Miami if nobody gets COVID. If you want to come to Miami, talk to me. The Cantor's class, When Words Alone Fail, Music and the Shoah, will meet at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, and we also have the book club meeting on Tuesday at 7:30. Summer camp, where it's time to sign up if you have littles that are interested in summer camp. We're accepting applications for that. Also, I cannot believe that we're doing this, but we're doing getting to know you dinners. Do people realize this? It's going to be at the end of the month. If you can host, please let us know. If you're interested in attending, please let us know. I might even have you at my house. I have to talk to my husband about that. I haven't discussed that with him yet. And then there's all sorts of things on the website and ways to help Ukraine. Finally, Andy Berger just brought this to my attention. I'm super excited about it. We're organizing an event for our college-bound students. I have one. There are a couple people here to be prepared when they get on campus on how we talk about Israel. So that's going to be coming up in May, and I'm super excited about that. And beyond that, did I forget anything? I got it all. Okay, great. So dinner is going to be, oh wait, Miriam is waving her hand. What's up? I'm sorry. May 19th. Oh, come on. That's not important. May 19th. I mean, hopefully most of the people in this room, I feel like most of you have registered already for it, but obviously we're celebrating 25 years of our incredible rabbi. If anybody's got any issues with paying for it, please see me privately or talk to the office. We are happy to help cover the costs for those in need, and it's going to be really awesome. We have more than 200 and how many people registered? A lot. 275. So that's amazing. We're so excited. Is there anything else, Miriam, you want me to say? Okay, great. So thank you all. Shabbat Shalom. Dinner is going to be upstairs, but I think we're going to do one more song.
Tomorrow morning, Havurah will be facilitating, 9:30 a.m. in the library. Study luncheon with Rabbi Saperstein at 1 p.m. also in the library. Again, if you already RSVP'd, there's food ordered. If you didn't RSVP, show up, but bring your food with you. Our closing song is Adon Olam, and then we're going to make Kiddush here in the sanctuary.
Adon Olam Hashem Alach B'terem Kol Yetzir Nivra Leit Nasa V'chafzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kihlot HaKol Levado Yimlok Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Hove Ve'hu Yiyeh B'tifara Ve'hu Yiyeh B'tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'en Sheni Leham Shilo Le'apiram Beli Reishit Beli Tachlit Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'ha'misram Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'ha'misram Ve'hu Eili Ve'chai Go'ali Ve'tzur Chavli Ve'tara Ve'hu Nisi Umanosli Menat Kosi Be'yom Ekra Menat Kosi Be'yom Ekra Be'yado Afkid Ruchi Be'etishan Ve'avi Aira Be'im Ruchi Geviati Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira.
You'll find Kiddush on page 5. Page 5 in the prayer book.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron le'maaseh bereishit ki hu yom techila למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת. כל העמים ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדיש השבת. אמן.
לחיים.
לחיים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Amen. We invite everyone upstairs to join us for dinner. I hope you RSVP. Come up anyway. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.